Almost every single role-playing game has one glaring factor about it that can be understood by everyone across every platform. You play the hero. Not all of them share this ideology, but most of them have you helping out others and eventually becoming the legend you wanted to be from the start of the game. Games like Genshin Impact, yes, I know what I just said. Wither and Waves, okay, please, let me just finish my thought. Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Legend of Zelda, all of them share that factor. But then there are games like Tyranny, where you can be the worst person to exist, or Kenshi, where you can steal someone's prosthetic legs and drop them off at a slave shop with no limbs. But an RPG game that allows you to be whatever you like suddenly receives massive praise and success. It makes the player hold the title in high regards. When a publisher company sees the success of one game, they try to emulate it by creating multiple entries or making a new game similar to it. However, in today's video, we will be focusing on one game that will never see a part 2 or have any similar entries from the creators after some controversies we will talk about later. So join me on this somewhat depressing video to talk about Disco Elysium and how we can't get another. Disclaimer: if you've been planning to play this, then stop the video and actually play it. The game is incredible and absolutely worth the time. It's short and you can finish it in a day or 2 days if you're busy and solely focus on playing the game. Otherwise, sit tight because I'm gonna break down the plot for you. So enjoy, don't forget to like and subscribe. I would often go there to the tiny church there, the smallest church in Saint Anne, though it once was larger. How the real may rest there, down through the mist there, toward the Seven Sisters, toward those pale cliffs there. I would often stay there in the tiny yard there. I've been so glad here, looking forward to the past here. But no, you're all alone. None of this matters at all. Disco Elysium was released in 2019 for the PC from Zaum Studios, written and designed by Robert Krufitz and the artist Alexander Rostov, and the music was composed by the British Sea Power. In 2021, the game had a release with full voice acting for consoles, and the PC version received a free update. And if you can't tell yet, Disco Elysium is an indie game. Despite that, it received massive praise for its art direction and narrative, and there were rumors that it will have a TV show adaptation. Everything came to a halt that we will expand on later in the video, which will make your blood boil, but first I want to introduce you to the game. It's inspired by Planescape Torment, released in 1999, which was a role-playing game that revolves around D&D style dungeon, and Disco Elysium has the same features with skill checks and dialogue trees and very little combat. The checks are dependent on the character archetype you choose to be. From the very start, you have 3 options to pick from. There's the Thinker personality trait, which comes with an encyclopedia of information about the world, the history of events, or just random facts, but you will be terrible understanding people. Then there's the sensitive type, who has a magnetic personality but is unstable and could lose his mind at any moment. This one is mostly used to understand the character's turmoil and even learn more about the main character. The next one is the physical trait, which means you will be strong as an ox but dumb as a rock. You'll be able to finish things much quicker, but you'll struggle if you need to use your brain, which is gonna suck considering you're trying to solve a murder. When I played this for the first time, I did it blind with no understanding of everything, and somehow I ended up being an ultra-nationalist, women-hating fascist who's way too racist to hang out with my partner. Not intentionally, I had no idea what I was doing at first, and took me a while to figure out how the skill checks worked, but after I learned, I started playing the game to the archetype I picked. But now that we know a bit about the mechanics of the game and how it's played, let's talk about the interactable items in the game. The first line is tools. This is where you can find some useful items to help you throughout the world, like a flashlight, pry bar, chain cutter, or even a boombox you can carry around. There are also other items like cigarettes, vodka, some drugs, and guns, a sword, a plastic bag to hustle for empty bottles and get that cheddar. The currency in the game is called real, and man, it helps out to have a lot of it. That also helps out to have plenty of healing items. Second line we have is clothes. Each type of clothing offers a specific buff or debuff to your stats. If you happen to be struggling with a charisma check, throw on some jeans that will make your ass pop, and hopefully you'll pass it on your second try. Then we have items. These are random objects that can be collected across the world. Some can be helpful, like the different types of dies in each one either unlocks the locked skill checks or decreases the difficulty of certain actions that require a roll. Finally, we have the interactable items. This one can be used to tick off certain tasks or simply pass the time. You can interact with books that will somehow end up damaging your character based on the topic of the book, if it's a sad book or if it's a book that reminds you of your past. Now, while there is very little combat, you are still able to take damage from physical attacks, or you get morale damage. The physical one occurs when you are attacked by other characters or you attack inanimate objects, like if you see a mailbox that you don't like the look of and you decide to kick it. The morale damage occurs when your character is reminded by their lowest moments or darkest time, or even attacked based on their beliefs in the game. But the thing that made me wonder a lot is how I take morale damage when I can't remember my past. Waking up from a drinking bender with no memories whatsoever, so how can I truly be embarrassed? Well, let's get into the story and learn everything together. You're greeted with a quote at the start of the game by R.S. Thomas. The Furies are at home in the mirror. It is their address. Even the clearest water, if deep enough, can drown. The full quote talks about shifting identities and never having your own. And with a black screen, two disembodied voices speaking to you, and they are trying to keep you in the dark because whatever is waiting for you out there is not good. At least that's what they are saying. This is your first encounter of a tree dialogue. You can pick to stay in the dark or ignore the voices and wake up. Either path you choose to go for will result in the same outcome. Your character waking up in a hotel room with a broken tape player, a shattered window, and surrounded with empty bottles and the remainder of cigarettes or hard drugs. You wake up with amnesia, fully naked, and have no idea what you even look like. Investigating the room will allow you to glean a bit of an idea on what's going on. You are also given your first task here. Retrieve your other shoe that you decided to throw out the window the night before. There will be many random tasks that you get from many things and NPCs in the game. You could ignore them, but I found myself completing most of them, and when I had some time to kill, waiting for an extra day, or waiting for a quest timer to go down. After you finish stumbling around the room and collecting your clothes and figuring out your face, you walk out into the hallway and you are greeted with a female NPC smoking against the railing. She seems to know you, but you don't know her, and she tells you that you have been blasting a sad song all night. Before she leaves, she says to you, because you will question her later, she did not do it. Then she leaves to her room and you with more questions. The game is set in the year 51, and I only learned that because I saw a calendar I can interact with. Walking downstairs, you can speak to Grotz, the cafeteria manager, and he's working on a stuffed bird that you decided you didn't like and broke it the night before. So far in the game, you seem to have more enemies than friends. You speak to Grotz and hope to get any bit of info, but everything he gives you is in pieces and you don't know how to put them together. He points towards the door where a dashing man in an orange bomber jacket is waiting for you. Throughout the game, there will be a voice in your head speaking to you based on the archetype you picked. If you succeed in random rolls about the environment or character, then you will get an idea on how to feel about them or get information around it. The first time I played it, I didn't know how my character felt about the man, but the second time I picked the emotional route, I learned that I felt very comfortable approaching this man, even saying that he would take a bullet for me despite the fact that he doesn't know me. He introduces himself as Lieutenant Kim Kutsaragi from Precinct 57, and we get our first piece of info that we are from Precinct 41, and he waits for you to introduce yourself. You realize that you have no idea who you are and only a minute ago learned that you were a cop. If you tell him the truth or lie to him with a fake name, he isn't really disappointed. As a matter of fact, he is probably the most understanding character in the entire game. God, I love him so much. After the introduction, you can speak to Kim once more before leaving, and you can ask him to debrief you on what's going on. And he tells you that you're part of the RCM, which is technically the police force in the game. Here he is debriefing you on the situation you're in.
3 days ago, the RCM emergencies desk received a report about a security guard who was found hanged in Martinez. An anonymous caller said there was a dead body behind the Whirling in Rags hostel cafeteria. The cadaver had been there for 4 days. No one had come to investigate.
Now you can roam freely and discover the town you're in. If you speak to Grat one more time, he will inform you that you need money for tonight's room, otherwise you will sleep on the streets. And if that happens, then it's game over. If you keep asking questions, he will inform you that you are in the Whirling Rags hostel, in the districts of Martinez and the city of Rivershall. That's about the info you can get out of him besides anything related to the murder investigation you're on. Walking out of the hostel, it's clear that Kim wants to visit the body, and conveniently, there's a massive hole in the wooden fence that leads to the back of the Whirling Rags where the body is hung. Walking towards it, you'll hear constant thuds, and I wish it was literally anything else, but it's actually one of the worst characters I ever met in this game, and I've met a full-on racist. You meet Kuno, a loudmouth, obnoxious piece of shit 10-year-old speed addict who's not only racist, but also homophobic and constantly threaten you with violence and almost made everyone think that you're a pedophile. Accompanied by Kuno S, who may or may not have killed someone, and she doesn't talk to you, and all she does is constantly remind Kuno that he's a badass child. Besides that, Kuno does have some helpful information, like if you get on his good side by bending the knee, which I was forced to do since I didn't have enough points to punch his lights out, he allowed me to get to the back side of the harbor through his bunker, which is necessary for the investigation. If you attempt to investigate the body early on, your character will lose their lunch, and you'll have to return later with ammonia to help suppress the urge to vomit. However, you can investigate the surrounding area where you will find 8 different chute types ranging from 40 to 45 in sizes, with one being deeper than the rest, which suggests that either the person was 200 kilos in size or was carrying a dead body, and the other one was more narrow and had no imprint, which suggests that it was either for a child or a woman. The ampule of ammonia you need is in a shop near the harbor gate. As you walk towards it, you'll come across a gardener who will provide you with info on where certain locations are. You can also borrow her gloves, which will come in handy, and as you walk towards the shop, you'll meet a racist who doesn't like Kim because, well, he's racist. Past him, there is a strike happening, and if you speak to the people around, you'll notice one large dude with clothes that barely fit him yelling, "Right to work!" So besides the fact there's a man hanging, you losing your memory, racism, homophobia, and lack of money, there's also a massive strike which makes everything so overwhelming from the start. So before you continue with the investigation, you need more info. So exploring the town on your first day won't be the worst idea. You'll meet rather interesting characters in the town from day one. Some are helpful to help learn about the world. Others are more concerned with their own ideas and beliefs that trying to help them seems trivial. But since my first playthrough archetype was the thinker, and I spoke to several people about the city, district, and the world we live in, let me break down the history of the world of Elysium. And this is gonna be confusing because I'm confused running it, so please don't be mad at me when I mess it up, please. The prehistory starts 12 billion years ago. The Big Bang happened, and then 2.6 billion years ago, civilization was wiped out. The antiquity timeline starts 8,000 years ago. Elysium started with the first innocence, which means that it's the personification of history. It's also seen as an international political figure. It's known as Pius or the Peloponnesian, who rose to prominence in ancient civilization, and it's said that they invented the concept of God, equality among men, and the gold standard, and created the Holy Party. 6,000 years ago, the Peloponnesian invented the study of the Pale, and later it became known as the Western Plane. The Pale is something that you can't measure. The deeper you go, the harder it is to describe. Even numbers stop working. The only thing that we know is that it's expanded at an immeasurable rate. Every day, every hour, every minute. The only person who came back from traversing the Pale spoke of a freckled-faced god. 4,000 years ago, Stone Age civilization known as Cyrillic, definitely butchered that, thrived and later became known as Insulined. Also, at some point, the Semines, which is an Isola, visited the Insulide but did not stay. Now we enter the Franco-Negrian centuries. 500 years ago, Franco, which I'm not gonna say the whole thing, anyway, was crowned in Mundi. He then establishes the real as the global currency and establishes the concept of a nation. Then we have the DeLorean century, which lands between 400 and 300 years ago. After 8 expeditions into the Pale by the Queen Irene Navigator, yes, that was her name, following the advice of her courtier Dolores Day, they discovered more Isolas than Mundi, which allowed other inhabited Isolas to connect with one another. Dolores Day was crowned and became the face of innocence, which prompted her to create the Moralist International and other institutes, and she reigned for 22 years until she was assassinated by one of her security detail. In the year circa 70, the kingdom of Surinese found the colony of Reverchal on the island of Likayu, which later gained its independence from the motherland. In circa 80, settlers from Ubisunt, which is the only Isola with the question mark in Elysium, built the DeLorean Church of Humanity in Marnaise. In the last century, which holds a lot of spoilers to the main story, talks about the revolution and how Reverchal ended the way it did. But you can clearly see it, so I'll avoid spoiling the entire plot now. Let's get back into the story until the timeline becomes relevant again. While exploring, I met Joyce, and she tells me the thing I feared the most, that the strikes, the murders, the company she works for, Wild Pines, are all connected. So in order to figure out who killed the security guard, then you have to figure out everything else. Now Joyce is rife with information, not only about the world of Elysium and some characters here and there, like Everett Clare, who is the head of the union that you also need to interview, but also about the hung man in the backyard. However, she won't give you any information despite the fact that you say you're a cop, because in your drunken stupor, you've lost your gun, badge, ledger, and police jacket. The jacket can be seen dangling off a railing which you can attempt to jump to or beat up a guy who's twice your size. Meet Measurehead, a man who is hired by Everett Clare, who happens to be incredibly racist. And don't worry, you can totally join him in his racism. And the best part about it is that none of these ethnicities are real. He is racist to literally things that don't exist. But should you join him? No. But in case you fail to jump the railing, fail to beat him up, then the only option you have is to become racist so that he will allow you to pass and see the head of the union. So whichever path you choose, just know that Kim will be judging you silently, or he will literally ask you, what the fuck are you doing becoming racist? After I met Everett Clare, I quickly didn't like him. Not because he wasn't helpful. Matter of fact, he was rife with information as well. But it seemed like him and Joyce don't like each other. He comes off as greedy, manipulative, and sleazy, and is doing everything in his power to get a leverage over the Wild Pines and make himself a better deal no matter how much it fucks over others. Since you need information from him, he requests favors in turn to make sure he benefits from having a cop doing his dirty work. One of the missions would drive away several settlers from their land, and I couldn't live with myself to fulfill that quest, even though he said he will help me find my gun and badge. And he's actually the first guy in the game to call me Harry. But he tells us about a group of union workers that we come to know as the Hardy Boys. They are essentially the government in this area. Their word goes and their law is what people are worried about and not the RCM. They are also a force of good in a way since they do help out a lot of people in Martinaise. Now, the body behind the whirling rags. One of the main quests you need to do is investigate the body, but since it's high up and you can't hold in your vomit, you can attempt to shoot the body, and if you fail, you could accidentally shoot Q&S, the little girl behind the fence, which will result in a game over, or shoot the body, which would make Kim disappointed, but would be very happy if you land the shot, so it's high risk, high reward in my book. If everything fails, you can ask Everett Claire to ask Measurehead to take the body down for you, and the initial field examination has many skill checks to go through. The more information you get out of it, the better your odds are in discovering the truth. In my first playthrough, I failed to get every skill checks, and afterwards, Kim said he's gonna take the body away if we are done with it. I agreed to it, and he left my party, and I was free to roam Revachol until the next day. While Kim was away, I discovered a few things. One was my ledger. I tried to flush it down the toilet because it contained bad memories, and now I know that there is an X something that caused me to drink to oblivion. There's not much info to gather here since I passed out reading everything I wrote, and what a lovely surprise, Kim came back to wake me up. So that's one way to bring him back quicker. Not sure if I should have, but it made the investigation go quicker kind of. Now that I'm armed with the information about the body, Kim and I end the day by sitting on the balcony of the Whirling Rags and debrief each other on our progress. Kim is somewhat of a closed book. He shares info here and there, but not enough to get to know him if you picked the Thinker archetype. Since the game starts on Monday, you will have to wait until Wednesday to explore the rest of the land. So on Tuesday, I spoke to the Hardy Boys, and wow, their leader, Titus, admits that all of them were responsible for killing the guy. Open and shut case, Johnson, or so I thought. Turns out that because it wasn't just one person delegating the commands or admitting that it was their plan, I couldn't just arrest all of them, and even if I try, it would be game over. I did, however, scan the room and counted 7 people, but there were 8 footprints near the body. Asking them about the 8th Hardy Boy prompted their leader to get defensive, but when we ask why they hung the man, they say that he sexually assaulted a girl. So this was their justice, their law. When you try to learn about the girl or establish your authority, you could fail and threaten to kill yourself, which will put the investigation in a dead end because, well, you'll be dead. Or you can leave and come back later when you're armed with more information. So I waited another day and just explored and discovered a dice maker, a failed game concept, a gym, a doomed commercial area, and I learned that Harry is a terrible artist. Also, there is a secret door in the Whirling Rags that no one knows about, and nobody knows where it leads, not even Grotz, the cook, or even the Hardy Boys knew of existence. So that was a fun discovery. On Wednesday, I can finally visit the fishing island across a walkway that was destroyed by an unknown insane driver. The identity of the driver was revealed slowly when Kim and I sat on a swing and waited for the ice to melt around the sunken vehicle. Yep. Apparently, Drunk Harry is a daredevil driver who jumped and broke a massive sign, causing the walkway to break and making everyone hate him. But on the good side, you find your badge, and your name is in fact Harrier Dubois. But what's more interesting is that you are a highly decorated officer of the law. Matter of fact, you could have been captain, but you rejected the promotion twice, which means in this universe you are a double Lefret's lieutenant, which also means that you are Kim's superior officer. However, try not to worry despite the fact that everything that happened so far makes you think that you are a terrible officer, because Kim tells you that there's hope and that you were once a great cop. And now this means you can finally get answers out of Joyce, but first let's explore the fishing island. While roaming around, I decided to finish some side quests. I stumbled on the DeLorean church that was built a long time ago, and there is a giant glass window with Dolores Day on it, but it's broken, so I can attempt to reconstruct the image again in my head. The voices tell me that it's a bad idea and I shouldn't do it, but I ignored them and got a task to give Dolores Day a small figurine I bought at the pawn shop. Also, Harry is extremely infatuated with Dolores Day from this point on. He learns that she's the resemblance of innocence and never stops talking about how beautiful she is. Not sure why I got that quest, but in the fishing area, there is a crazy lady that runs around and pretends to be a cop. She has my gun, and I spoke to her on my own and managed to get my gun back. So now that I'm armed with my jacket, badge, and gun, I feel like a real cop again. And I learned that I can't progress the story forward without getting answers out of the Hardy Boys. And since most of my skill checks failed, I ended up leveling my weak points and unlocking another attempt. I spoke to Joyce first and she tells me info about the security guard. He was hired by Wild Pines to get rid of the strike organized by Efrat Clare. She also shares some details about his tattoo, which she tells us that it's showcasing of his service history. And then she tells us that he is not the only one on this island. And though the Wild Pines sent a team of 4, Ellis, who is the hanged man, and 3 of his men that have gone rogue at this point and wanting to avenge his death. So now that we know more about him, I went back to the Hardy Boys and I finally broke through to them. I get the name Clashier, who was the girl that we met at the very start of the game. I did, however, notice a key behind all the men, and if you wait for the right time to look out the window, you will be able to spot it, and it's the key that opens the mysterious door in the kitchen. Behind said door, you'll find some pinball machines, and if you speak to Grot, he will tell you that the Whirling Rags used to be an arcade. But what is very interesting is the fact that there is a hidden elevator that leads to the roof, and if you investigate the room, you'll notice a hole in the wall where Clashier's bed is, and footprints that are about a week old compared to the rest of the room. So as you walk out to the roof, you meet the woman who was assaulted by the mercenary, and this story gets both muddled and clear at the same time. If you choose to bring up the Hardy Boys said about her sexual assault, she will be honest and say that she wasn't raped and that everything they did was consensual. So if you speak to the Hardy Boys again, they will call her a whore for not following their orders. However, Clashier has a huge plot twist. She tells you that Lele died during intercourse. She reveals to you that he was shot in the back of the head and he slumped over, and after a few days she called the RCM. And if you ask why they hanged the man, she tells you about Ruby, the 8th Hardy Boy, who is a girl, and according to Clashier, she was infatuated with her and she staged the hanging and even asked her to run away. This was an interesting point because once you expand on why Clashier needs to run away, she tells you that she's a corporate spy and that she's been on the run for a while. I had the option to arrest her and keep her at the Whirling Rags until I found Ruby, but I decided that she's been through enough and it was time to let her go. I went back and spoke to Titus, the leader of the Hardy Boys, and managed to get him to tell me about Ruby. We gathered enough info to understand that she might have ran off to the fishing island. I found a building that I ended up investigating it more and passing a few skill checks and literally teleporting to the rooftop. I know Harry is talented, but don't listen to Kim when he says that, yeah, I just closed my eyes and climbed up really fast. I confronted Ruby, and you cannot mess this up because she will just off herself to avoid going to jail. So I had to be careful with my words and not mess up things, and I did load a previous save so I get more information out of her. Don't judge me, I'm only human, man. Ruby gave me a piece of info that literally unhinged my jaw. She says that Clashier staged the hanging. It was her plan all along, that she knew what she was doing the entire time. She just needed the Hardy Boys to help move the body. So if the plot wasn't thick enough, it just keeps getting thicker. So after sending Ruby on her way, I bolt back to the Whirling Rags in hopes of stopping Clashier and asking her what the fuck is happening. The group of men that were with Lele are now holding the Hardy Boys at gunpoint, so I can step between them or let them duke it out. I stepped in. I don't know why I wanted Harry to be a good cop, maybe to pay back the fact that I became racist in the game, but I needed him to be a good cop. The rogue men are planning to kill everyone as revenge, but they don't know what Harry knows. So in hopes and trying to convince everyone to chill the fuck out, I learned from Grot that Clashier ran off, so she can't even explain the situation or help out. So I'm stuck trying to pick up the correct correct words out of a tree so I don't fuck it up. It's like that one Eddie Murphy movie where he doesn't have many words. That movie went under the radar. It's not a very good movie, but it fits my reference. Thankfully, I didn't fail many skill checks. I had enough points in my skills to pass most of them, and trust me, you don't want to fail this because you could lose Kim as a partner, and you need Kim. So after the gunfight, I wake up several days later and Grot tells me that Clagier left me a present, so I go up to her empty room and see a thread from the bed to the direction of the bullets. Harry and Kim connect the dots, and the only spot that makes sense is an island that we saw at the very start of the game using the binoculars at the edge of the pier. It does require a boat ride, and they did give me a warning saying that past this point, I will not be able to come back to finish any side quest, which meant that we have reached our final mission. Before I continue with this, let me talk about Disco Elysium. This game truly is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It's like the game Bully, it doesn't have a sequel and probably won't have another, but Disco Elysium is on a different level of once-in-a-lifetime. Are there similar games to this? Sure, hundreds with skill checks and conversation trees and doing whatever you want. But the developers behind it, Zaum Studios, were screwed over after starting out, and 3 of their developers announced in the same day that they will never make a sequel. Did they consider making one? Yes. So here's what happened to them. On November 9th, 2022, the artist behind the game, Alexander Rostov, posted a message from himself and Robert Krovitz, directing it to the fans of Elysium. It begins by saying that their stake is in a form of minority shareholding that belongs to the Zaum studio, which owns everything related to the game. The majority of the company shares were held by Margis Linnami, which I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that name, an Estonian businessman that provided the initial capital for the game. In 2021, he was bought out by Tutrek company that belongs to 2 men, Ilmar Compass and Tonis Haval, again butchering all the names. He continues to write, as minority shareholders, our rights are limited. As long as Linnam remained the majority shareholder, we were confident that the company's financials were in order, and all the shareholders were being treated equally. The same cannot be said for Compass and Haval. As soon as they became majority shareholders, we were quickly excluded from daily operations, and our employment was terminated and our access to the company's information was shut off. Weeks after, Alexander and Robert were fired from the company after they requested to see financial data that was being withheld from them. Both Robert and Alexander believe that Zaum was obtained by fraud. They believe that the money that was used to buy the majority shareholds was taken illegally from Zaum Studio itself. Alexander writes, money that should have gone towards making a sequel. We believe that these actions, which in our view and the view of our lawyers amount to criminal wrongdoings punishable by up to 3 years imprisonment, perpetrated by Ilmar Compass and Tonis Haval with support of Kaur Kender, another minority shareholder. This is hardly surprising given that Tonis Haval, who we believe to be the ringleader, has been convicted for defrauding investors on a different matter in 2007, which he then provides a link to a court document involving the man. They end the post by thanking the fans and reminding them that Harry Dubois is the law and it's there to protect them. So when I say Disco Elysium is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, I mean everything the developers have done and have gone through makes this game worth playing. So let's finish the story. We take a boat and make our way to the island. I explored the area and found a bed, which Kim suggests I should take a nap to rest up a bit after the ride. During my short rest, I have a dream where I meet Dolores Day, or at least that's who I thought I was meeting. Turns out that several years ago, Harry had a fiancée. Her name was Dora Ingerland, and she takes the form of Dolores Day. And depending on your skill set at this point, she will change what she says. Harry projects his insecurity onto her by suggesting that she left him due to his low income, but she says that whenever he gets sad, she couldn't help him. She was also with Harry before he was an officer of the RCM, and he was her first true love. No matter what you do in this dream, she will leave, and you will wake up sad. Her leaving was the reason for your drinking bender and Marnays. almost as if you're trying to self-destruct and suppress the memories at once. Once you wake up, you continue to investigate the island and you stumble on an old man with a rifle. The game labeled him as the deserter, but he tells you his name is Isov Lilianovich Dross. Born in the year 92, Dross was 10 years old when the revolution reached Revachol. He was recruited in Jamrock as a volunteer revolutionary soldier, receiving both warfare and ideological education in the École de Contrôle. However, his training was cut short by the Coalition of Nations assault on the commune in the year 08. Witnessing troops drop from the sky on his location and witnessing many of his fellow soldiers die, he abandoned his post and claims that his actions were reactionary and leaving more of his unit behind and hiding in a bunker. When the morning came, he swam back to the islet and the fortress remained defenseless. But due to the lack of ideological training, he believed himself loyal to the party and refused to reintegrate into society and continue to fight against the coalition. He used tunnels and bunkers to sneak around the city while everyone was asleep. This is where he stumbled on Clachier and became very infatuated with her. He continued to watch her day and night and seeing her drink and do drugs and sleep with whoever she wanted. He tried to get her attention by leaving dried petals at the rooftop, but to no avail. And he even snuck around the paintball workshop so he can watch her closer by carving a hole in the wall, until he started witnessing the big brute of a mercenary sleeping with her. And he didn't like that at all. And one night, when they were doing the deed, he takes his final shot and landed in the back of his head, which resulted in the entire story to exist. It wasn't a plan by Everett Clare, it wasn't Joyce, it wasn't the past hunting Clachier, and it wasn't the Hardy Boys. It was just a bitter and jealous old man. But as he confesses to everything, Harry and Kim start trying to figure out how to get him back to the station. And as we are discussing it, a phasmid appears, a creature that is believed to not exist. Turns out that the only reason this old man had any brain function was because the phasmid kept him sane by building a nest near him, and it's a very strange encounter since only Wheels saw phasmid in the game. Kim takes a photo, and after a bit it leaves and Dross begins to speak nonsense. If you check the nest, you will find Clachier's passport, which will have a different name, even though she already gave you a couple of different names. As you make your return to Martinez, your actual partner from Precinct 41 shows up, and this is where I learned I was a racist, so here's the actual reaction to it.
He is also a full-blown fascist, an ultra-nationalist, woman-hater, and more than a little racist, which I guess goes well with the grind. I do not know, but he is vocal about both beliefs.
God damn it! How the fuck did I make myself a full-blown fascist? An ultra-nationalist woman hater, and more than a little racist. What the fuck did I do?
And then
at the end, I convinced Kim to join the precinct and we became partners probably. And I kept my job. Now, if you manage to drink, cannot solve the case, mess things up horribly, you will be fired. That's why Kim was needed to be around, so he can convince your precinct that you're not that bad. Apart from the racism, women hating, and fascism. But hey, at least you're not homophobic.